All right, so let's talk about economy and where I lived and what I lived for. And so the questions on economy were, how do we think Thoreau would feel about modern day America? And William, since I bounced you all over the place, you want to answer that first?
So I do not think that he would like it just because, well, I guess for the economy aspect, just the big government, I don't think he would like how that's controls basically everything. And then as well, like, I feel like just like the cost of everything now, he would also not like that.
Okay. Do I'll come to you, Mike. You said something about big government,
Yeah.
okay? Is there anything about big government in what we read? Or do you think you might be projecting there?
I feel like we talked about something like how he likes more small, centralized.
When we get into civil disobedience, he definitely will start talking about government. And so you saw in the video, they talked about he's anti-government.
Yeah.
But that's not really in what we, that's not, so you're remembering his biography, which is fine, right? And yeah, he would be shocked at the size of our government. That's for sure. Okay, Michael.
It says, how do you feel about like capitalism today? And the main idea of capitalism is like you take care of yourself. And he was a very like he liked to take care of himself. He was a lonely man. He liked solitude, and he liked to work for his living. So the solitude that capitalism would provide him, I think he'd like it.
Interesting take. I think you're crazy. I think you would hate it, but what you said logically is absolutely right. Right? If our economy is you work and you get, the more you work, the more you get, or if you just want bare minimum, yeah. I mean, if he started getting going crazy, you say, hey, you don't have to work that hard, right? Just do the minimum. That's a great point. I love the point. I don't know that he would, but I like the philosophy. I like what you're thinking there. Yes, go ahead, Sean.
I think he would hate it because the whole point of capitalism is to compete against other people. And even if you don't want to compete, they kind of push you towards like having to make more and doing more work. And I think it's like really pushed us to like really want more material goods and stuff. And I think that he would just be disgusted by that.
Yeah, and that's the part I'm thinking about. But I agree with you. If you don't want it, you don't have to go get it. But Sean is right. I mean, in our world, you're kind of it pushes you that way. You have to resist it, right? You have to actually say, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to, buy that or live there or whatever. I don't need that for myself. 1, 2. Okay, go ahead, Lily.
The idea where like capitalism, like you're taking care of yourself, but like capitalism thrives off of people who want for materialism, and he's very against that.
It does. That we're always talking about economic growth. The economy grew 3% last year.
That's just want for more things.
I'm sorry?
That's just the want for more things. Like,
Yes.
very materialistic.
Well, and the other thing, the economy is always going to grow as long as our population goes up at a steady clip, right? If our population goes up 20 million every year, or 15, 20 million, whatever it is, just think about what has to be built for, if we add, just say 10 million every year, we got to build schools for those 10 million kids, the kids of those 10 million, right? We got to build a hospital for those 10 million. We got to get roads and fire departments and life squads. You know what I mean? Like, so it's all that stuff's going to just habitually grow anyway, and that growth drives a lot of our economy. We don't have an economy based on zero growth, right? Our stock market would plummet if a president said, "We're a zero growth policy here. We don't want to make any more money." I mean, they'd run him out of the country. Annabelle.
I agree with what Michael said about, I think he would like the aspect of like you get out of it what you put into it, like, and working for what you have. But then I also agreed with Sean that he wouldn't like the excessive work that people do to like live a more luxurious life.
Very good. Very good. Tatum.
Yeah, to go along with that, like I like what, I'm sorry, I don't know Lily, yeah, said about how we would hate the materialistic aspect of that. But going with what Michael and Ariel said, there was a quote that I put he goes on to talk about how the bird was like singing, how happy it was or whatever. So I think the thing about capitalism is like being able to build something for yourself, you know, compared to like communism where everyone's equal no matter what. Capitalism is being able to like build your own house. I think we like that.
Okay. Now, I'm glad you brought up communism, because I want to make sure that you guys know communism does not exist in Henry David Thoreau's time. It's not even theorized. That comes about, and I'm not saying that you're making that. The idea of communism comes about in, I think it's 1861-ish by Karl Marx, and then it's not even tried until 1917. But there were these hippie communes all over New England. They were utopias. And in these utopian societies, part of which Emerson and some of these other guys tried out, they left immediately because they actually said it was more work. Because they, I remember one guy said it was Louisa May Alcott's father, I think, tried it for a while. And he's like, I ain't chopping wood all day and plowing fields because you guys won't use a horse, you know. I want to write. So they were thinking it was going to be awfully laid back, and it wasn't. So, and we know the problem with communism. That's proven beyond the shadow of a doubt. Capitalism is much better than communism. But the fallback of capitalism is getting ourselves overwhelmed with all the materialism. It's hard not to with all this fun stuff. And it's the competition that constantly drives people to make better products because they can make more money and they can live a higher lifestyle. It feeds off of one another, you know. Competition drives us to be better, you know. Even like something like the GMC, which is a huge school district, right, in competition. Some of the worst teams in the GMC would go to other districts and destroy those teams, right, because they don't have the same level of competition. You know, and it drives the program up, it all ramps it up. So let's shift. If there's anything else on economy, you guys are very actively engaged in that. In the whole of Walden, it's 64 pages, and I'll tell you, I think the producers of the book could have done a better job pulling more fascinating pieces from economy and putting it in here. I mean, the rest of the book is fine, but there was some great parts of economy that don't make it in here. And of course, that could just be my opinion. They might have struck a chord with me. I think they spent too much time talking about moving that house. But I understand why, because he's living in that. He tore that down and drug it across town, rebuilt it. He didn't buy new wood. He's the ultimate recycler, right? He reduced, reused, and recycled. So how about some lines out of Where I Lived and What I Lived For? Lily, well, she was ready for that one.
Yeah.
Which one you like?
This one was just like really interesting. It was, our life is frittered away by detail. Just that line right there. Like he's completely right. Like a lot of people just like focus on like the little things instead of like looking at the big picture of everything. Like
Okay.
they're focused on getting every single little thing right instead of just like enjoying the simplicity of everything.
Do we know, does everybody know the word frittered? It's not a word that, you know, people use very often. Fritter is to waste. And our lives are frittered away by detail. We're always worried about the micro, the little, and all of the details instead of worrying about the macro, the big thing. And the only big thing that you should be worried about is enjoying your life here. That's it. The other stuff doesn't matter. Now, if you find pleasure in certain things, then go ahead and get that. But one of the things about the transcendentalists that I would want everybody to learn is make sure you know who you are before you start going down the road. Don't figure out who you are at 30, 40 and realize all that I am is not all that I want to be is not what I am. And then you're in a job, you're in a family, you're stuck, right? And Thoreau never got stuck purposefully. I think that's why he never married. He had love interest when he was younger, but he never married. One of his friends said, getting married is like sticking your arm into a giant bag with 99 snakes and one eel. That was what he thought of as marriage. And Thoreau must have really took that to heart. It said, or another guy said, hanging is like marriage, except hanging is better. It's quick and over before you know it. So another guy that probably didn't like to be married. But that frittered away. Our lives are, we're so worried about all this stuff that we can't enjoy. And it's something that I see in AP classes. I have to constantly like get students to, you guys are you fritter your education away on grades, and I understand why, right? That's your political capital for college, and it's your political capital at home with your parents. I got all A's, you know, that kind of thing. I understand that, and I'd be silly to tell you not to worry about it. So, but there are some things that you are exposed to in school which are wonderfully amazing, and you guys are smart and you could absorb it. This being one of those kinds of things. Don't worry about grades. That's why we're not worried about grades here. You guys all got the grade today. You sat in here, you read, you thought, you looked up at you know, this picture of Nirvana up here. You listened to the birds that are singing. Right? You got it, right? You didn't need anything else. Even if you were only pretending to read and sitting here listening to the conversation, you're still unwinding for a minute. We got a couple more minutes. Give me another quote. Yes, Brielle. She has.
The quote, but tinkering upon our lives to improve them, who will build the river. I think this was hinting to the toxicity of like unchecked capitalism at the time that was going to bring the National Revolution.
Sure. He's worried about unchecked capitalism in 1845. By the way, it hadn't gotten crazy yet. The crazy capitalism starts post-Civil War, when the creation of the steel by Carnegie and Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and J.P. Morgan. That's when it gets really fun to study, but it can be destructive. These guys are still pretty agrarian, you know. Samuel, is that a hand?
Yeah, I didn't have the quote, but I said I think it'd be pretty funny if we like plopped him in like New York City modern day.
It dropped him into New York City?
Or like some popular city where it's so chaotic.
I think he'd be asking for the quickest direction to the river so he could jump in. He would not. New York City would be overwhelmed. Concord, Massachusetts is nowhere today, except on the outskirts. Like going to Ross, right? Ross is not very far from Cincinnati, not at all. You don't have to drive very far, but you're pretty close. Well, in 1845, it was a day's journey to Boston. Today, it's a ride in the car, but. Yeah, he would not. And Boston was smaller than Fairfield probably then, if you can picture that. All right, so tomorrow when we come back together, we'll reconvene. I'll let you finish, Walden, and then we'll start here and we'll finish out some of the great lines from Thoreau. While you're packing up, what do we think of what we're reading? Good, bad? I know Lily likes it because Lily almost ripped her arm off and threw it at me so she could share a quote, which is good.